Welcome to the bold analysis, ladies and gentlemen. Today, the 12th day of June 2025. We are actually mid the year, and so much for us here. We are still, and I told you that we'll give you blow by a blow account, what happens, what's new, what is developing about Albert Ojwang's murder. Make sure you subscribe here, because here is where you will get every account of what they are saying. So if you want to know anything new, update about it, you need to stick here. Kindly subscribe to our channel, because in this podcast, the Star has detailed what, according to them, is a secret night of torture in KARURA forest before Albert Ojwang was returned to police cells. So we are going to look at this story in details and also interrogate, or rather interpret, what is the objective of that twist, and also look at what the other leaders are saying. So make sure you subscribe to our channel. Subscription is absolutely free. When you subscribe to the channel, you'll be getting notifications. And so when we publish our videos, you will not miss our well-analyzed videos. Make sure you subscribe. This is the story. Secret night operation. Albert Ojwang tortured into coma in KARURA forest. Go with me to the Star, and this is what the Star is writing. I want us just to look. I just want to look at it verbatim as it is, because that is what will give you the real picture. Sources close to the ongoing investigation say between 9:35 p.m. to 1:39 a.m., the time Ojwang's death was recorded in the occurrence book, he was removed from his cell and taken to KARURA forest. He continues to say, the truth is, Ojwang was in good condition when booked, but he was moved later that night, tortured and returned nearly lifeless, said a source familiar with the case who spoke on condition of anonymity. One of the key findings is that the CCTV footage for that place was tampered with, both for the reception and that for the OCS office. I don't know why the one for the OCS office had to be tampered with. Probably, perhaps that's where the body is supposed to pass or something. But with absence of that CCTV footage, it begs more question as to what was being concealed. And the story continues to say, according to multiple sources, a private vehicle was used to ferry Ojwang from the station to KARURA forest. This was after DCI vehicle that had transported him from his home in Homa Bay to Nairobi was discharged. And the DCI boss, said yesterday that they can trace through GPS the path that was used by the government vehicle. The truth is that Ojwang was delivered to the central station by the officers who arrested him while in good condition and booked. But he was again moved out at night to a forest along Kiambu Road, where he was tortured, said a source aware of the events but who sought anonymity so that he could speak freely. Inside the forest, he was allegedly beaten unconscious, kicked, punched, and assaulted while still handcuffed by a group of officers, including a senior police figure and his driver. I want you to mark that part. By a police figure and his driver. When Ojwang slipped into coma, his assailants reportedly panicked They bundled him back into the private vehicle and returned him to Central Police Station just after the 1 a.m. Some station officers allegedly objected to taking a bleeding, unresponsive man into custody, but were overruled. An order came from above to book him. Odour was placed in a solitary cell. Petty suspects were reportedly released that night to make space. The DCI vehicle used to bring him from Homa Bay was dismissed. The mission, it seems, was done. At 1:39 a.m., Ojwang's death was officially recorded under the OB number 090806-2025. On Wednesday, the Inspector General of Police said officers wanted to know if you look at that story on them. The person, yes, speaking on anonymity so that is not known, but he seemed to be privy to the whole last moment from the station, and the same person also seemed to know what happened when he was taken to KARURA. The same person is also confirming that the DCI officers who brought him at the station actually brought him in a good state. That part is critically coming out, and when you look at it, that you can see. But these are 5 observations I can make from that story, from that turn. Number 1, I think that is the new development in that story. That story is supposed to drive a theory here. Remember, it came after the police bosses appeared in Senate, and both the Inspector General and the DCI boss was seemingly narrowing down to the Central OCS as the prime suspect. And for better part of Wednesday, I think the country was being told that Albert arrived at the station sound and safe. Now, for this turn now to say, and I think one thing is coming is, when those who are pushing that, the public was, and I think even an analyst here, the public was supposed to interpret it this way. If he was brought well, then maybe alipigwa ka station. That is what is coming out. So this story that yes, he was booked well, but later taken in the thick of the night, beaten elsewhere, and then returned back unconscious, is supposed to wrap out that narrative. That the fact that DCI officers brought him here, the fact that they are the ones that brought him to the station and he was sound, does not mean that he was beaten in the station. And clearly, if you can allow me, if you can look through the lens, this informer seemed to be someone from those who were interdicted yesterday, who wrote their statements yesterday, and majority of them, or rather most of them, are the ones that had in Central. And that is supposed to show you that when, as much as they're saying he was brought well, yes, aleta kuwa mzuri, but when in the night, some other people came and picked him. That is what will beg the question. Who are these people that later came and picked him up, wakampiga na wakamrudisha? That is the gist of it. Because it can either not be the DCI who arrested him, nor also the police officers at Central Station. This could have been another team from elsewhere. Second interpretation of the story by the Star. The leak is to show that it was a supervised operation. And that is why, in the story, the writer is saying there was a powerful senior police officer with his driver. And that is why by yesterday, analysts were pushing, and I kept on asking, if you want to tell the country that it is police officer X who beat up Albert, you rather then ask yourself the motive. When you try to probe the motive, you will be tempted to ask, let's assume it is the police at Central Police Station. Albert, kuna kitu aliwakosea? Kuna kitu aliwakosea? The moment you try to connect the dots between mtu amekosewa na deceased is when you are going to get that. And the mention of the senior police officer and his driver is very intentional. It's a very intentional a statement to push this narrative to someone bigger who gave the orders. And at this point, I've seen a covert scheme. Esther Pasari is telling the country the way they were with one of the senior police officers and when he heard about this information, they were shocked. And you will see politicians, even yesterday, there was a statement from Murkomen. And when Murkomen was asked, why is it that people are being interdicted, but the complainant in this case, who is also a senior police officer, is not being interdicted, is not being told to step aside? He said, guilty until proven, innocent until proven guilty. And I agree, someone was saying, William Ruto might not allow some of his fellows to face the wrath, or rather to leave job, because that will embolden Rigathi Gachagua. And entirely agree with that. I agree with that is one of the challenges in it. I've looked at the other interpretation. The other understanding is that someone is sending a signal that after nibebesha mzigo. And this leak coming out is clearly sending a signal to the bosses that I am willing to say what I know about this. Remember, those are the only options. Utabebesha mzigo. I'm willing to say what I know about this. So, yesterday I saw a report today that I want us to pay attention to. One, Sakaja met with Sakaja met with the family of Albert, and Sakaja said that they are related. You know, Sakaja said that they are related with the family, and I just want us to read what he said. Today I received the family of late Albert Ojwang at City Hall, a moment of shared grief and deep reflection. Albert wasn't just a top digital influencer. Albert wasn't just a top digital influencer. He was family to my team, one of the most consistent and vocal believers in my journey. In honor of that loyalty and in recognition of the tragedy of his untimely death, I have committed to work with Albert's family through this painful chapter. I will take care of the burial expenses, educate his three-year-old son, George Miles, and finish paying widows' college fees. Albert was more than a name online. He was a friend, a patriot, a young man with promise. And according to Sakaja, he's talking, you can see the photos. They're trying to give the family a finality, a closure. And curiously, I took these two photos. The photo of this mzee smiling. This photo was needed. And you compare this photo was needed because this mzee was crying. And I think the state felt that his tears are actually charging the masses and is making the masses more angry. That is why there was a need to try to replace those tears. And of course, it's not something bad that they decided to give the family a job. It's not something that you can say it's a bad move. But two, but if you look at this, in this mzee here, you look at this other photo, you will actually understand that he is really demanding answers. But it was brought here by his lawyers. From this meeting, the report here is the government is pushing for the burial. The state is pushing for the burial to happen very fast so that a closure can be given. President Ruto also personally called the parents and the widow of late Albert, who died in police custody. During the call, the president shared his condolences and assured them that justice will be served. He emphasizes that those responsible will be held accountable and says he closely following the investigation. The state agents talking to the family to make sure that burial is rushed. That's just another report we just received this morning. This is the stake. Ruto is panicking because this has the potential of bringing protest. And the protest was on his way. The broad-based deal is on the brink of collapse. Ruto understands that Albert's death exposed deep rot in his security sector. And that sector needs a big overhaul. Probably interdictions, the usual things. There is something that Nani said. There is something that Khalwale said, that we should have punitive, and the word was punitive, punishment for a Kenyan who kills the other. So that mtu aogope nikiwa itakuwa hivi. In fact, just out of the blues, if you kill someone, why should you leave yourself? We should go back and change the law. Ukipatikana kama umeua mtu wewe pia uwawe. Yes. That is the only way we will instill fear. But if we make it possible that you can get away with it, they will say atafungwa 7 years na manslaughter. Atafungwa na hii. And let me tell you, if there are two, if there are two factors that police officers fear, man escaping from custody, because the narrative here is, we mwenyewe umempatia, we mwenyewe ndiye alikupea pesa, or dies in police custody. Dies in police custody means when he's under custody, police custody is the cells are safe spaces for the convicts, for the suspects. they're safe spaces. So mtu akiwa inside police custody, and by the way, I saw one of the MPs saying, what is so unique with this? People have died in the past. What is so unique and why it's causing an anger is a blatant recklessness. Ile kichwa ngumu, macho ngumu. The fact that Albert died inside when on the hands of the police. I insist, there are two things involved. There are three factors involved. One, he was brought up. The people who took him from the cell, tortured him and brought him, maybe are not even the ones who arrested in Homa Bay. Two, they may not even be the police officers from Central Police Station. Number two, the chain of command was totally outside the police system. These are just thugs, goons, who are not even police officers. And that is what should worry the country, whether there exists such a group of goons that can do that one. It may be outside, not DCI, not Kenya Police, not anyone. Someone who's just his people. Number three, it's a wrong precedence. And if it's allowed to go, to continue, then Kenya is in for a rupture. Thank you.
Bwana Ruto, we are telling you, you are the problem. You are the problem. Not Lagat, not Kanja, and not Masangeli, and not DCI. It's you. Why? Because you don't say anything when people, Kenyans are getting killed. And you don't seem to care. Na ingekuwa one of these deaths ni mtoto wako, mambo ingekuwa mengine. But you don't care. Kwa hivyo, sisi leo, we are filing a case in court as we are telling now. It has been filed in Nairobi against Lagat. Okay? Na we are not going to nyamaza kwa sababu serikali inaanza kukishika mambo ya Gen Z on 25th. Wanaona kwamba something is going to happen. Sasa unataka kunyamaza wanaharakati wote. They can kill us, but they cannot kill the idea. People will still fight for the rights and the constitution and human rights of this country. And we are ready to sacrifice.
So much, Kagin. Now, as we close the show tonight, here are my 2 cents. The National Police Service being caught pants down, lying to a whole nation is diabolical. Them sitting down with their brilliant minds and deciding, wacha tuseme, Albert alijipiga kwa wall, and unanimously pressing send for the whole of Kenya to read and believe they had nothing to do with his death. Just goes to show how big of a problem we are dealing with here. So now, going forward, how does the police unit expect Kenyans to believe that Rex was not murdered in their hands? How are Kenyans to believe that Charles Owino, a teenager from Kajiado, was not murdered by the police and was allegedly a victim of mob justice during last year's Mandamano? How are Kenyans to believe that Denzel Omondi simply drowned in a dam? You see, for a unit that is trained to shoot, you guys really shot yourselves in the foot with this Albert lie. Safe to say, kimeanza kuwaramba, and Kenyans are woke enough to watch all this unfold. Also, for the president to be quiet about all this and instead hold a meeting for Murima artists at State House is quite tone deaf of his seat. But that's old news by now. He's quite on brand. All in all, justice has to prevail, must mandatory.
Hapa Vihiga. Na kwanza niwaambie tulikuwa na mswada leo ama tulikuwa na mjadala pale bunge kuhoji hawa viongozi wa usalama nchini akiwemo Waziri Murkomen na wenzake. Mimi niliamua nikuje kwa sababu speaker alikataa niongee. Si kama huyu speaker wenu hapa ni mzuri. Kwa sababu Murkomen alikuja akatuambia pale yeye kama waziri hana macho, hana masikio, hana chochote, hajui chochote. Na mimi sikushangaa kwa sababu hii serikali iko hakuna kitu wanajua. Hawasikii sauti ya mwananchi, hawaoni maovu ambayo yanaelekezewa wananchi, kilio ya wananchi hawasikii. So aliconfirm leo wote ni watu bure, hakuna haja ya kukaa hapa, afadhali nikuje nisikize vile watu wa Vihiga mnasema, sio?